Hello people of YouTube, my name is Brad. This is my channel Adamant Orange, where I build and review a lot of 3D metal models, and today we are going to talk about this very colorful model right here. This is a long one, we have Optimus Prime in truck form, Western Star 5700. And I'm really not sure quite the proper way to lay that name out. And just about any way we'll probably do. This is what Optimus Prime, or at least one of the newer generations of Optimus Prime, looks like in his truck form. He's a Western Star 5700 truck. And in this particular case, this is an ICONX model, and it is definitely colored. There's a lot of blue and red, shiny blue and red in this particular model. It's just, I think, rather beautiful, rather well, gorgeous looking. And I have enjoyed this build. This was not as difficult to build as many of the things as I have done lately. It was actually pretty easy with one or two little exceptions. Did not find this build aggravating at all, with one exception. It really did go by nice and easy and smoothly. The wheels were, the way they come together was a little bit different one I'm accustomed to. With, for instance, this back section right here, you know, normally when you build a wheel on a vehicle, on all the vehicles I've done so far, you build the wheel with one piece with the front and the back, and then there's a piece that sticks out that attaches to the frame in some fashion. With this, you build the front and wheel part of the wheel, but the back is actually built in with the housing that it sits into, so that kind of changes the dynamic a little bit. I mean, it works quite well, and I'm not dissatisfied with it, but it's an interesting change and something to comment on. The model comes together very nicely. The instructions are really good. There is one confusing part that really they've tried to clear up, but it still was a bit confusing, and I'll explain that here in just a bit. But it comes together very nicely, very smoothly, and not overly challenging to put this together. It was a very fun and rewarding, and not overly, if you're looking for a serious challenge, this is not it. This is a mediocre challenge and a lot of fun to build, and you get a really nice result with this one. I will say with the side mirrors here, they are quite flat, and the instructions don't really say to do anything with them, but I can see the possibility if you wanted to take the time to put a little bit of curve in the mirror to kind of bubble it around it, and maybe a little bit of curve in the stem of it that connects to the truck. I could see that being a possibility to giving it some more shape if that's something you wanted to do. I did not do that. I thought about it, but I really didn't want to go to that much trouble. I just kind of wanted to finish the build, but it's something that if you're into modding and want to take the time and raise the challenge level of this build, you could certainly do. The way the sides of the cab or the sleeper part come together were a bit interesting and different, but really once you work it out, not hard at all. Everything come together nice and smoothly. And if we go back to the packaging and take a look on the back, we are in kind of the reddish orangish, a little over midway between easy and hard, and it about fits. I would almost say for me to bump it back a little bit, but I wouldn't really argue with that scale very much at all. This build took about 3 hours and 10 minutes to put together, and that is of course including all the time it takes to clip out the parts, figure out where they go, and put them together. I, if you haven't noticed, like to clip the parts out a little as I go. I know some people like to clip out and stage things ahead of time, and that's fine. If that works for you, that's great. That just gives me way too much opportunity to accidentally bump a tray, even a magnetized tray, off the table and lose parts, or to get confused because something gets mixed up. So I like to do it a little bit at a time. I do want to comment on the underside of this particular truck, and I'm going to have to show you a close-up of that. On the bottom of it is sort of an outlined colored 2D picture of the front of Optimus Prime in, you know, ambulatory Optimus Prime form, not truck form, so it's kind of hidden underneath, and I think that's a clever little artistic touch there that they have done. I don't know if that was on Metal Earth's behalf that they added that in there, or if it was suggested by Transformer people themselves. I don't know, but I think that's really cool that you've got that little glowy, not glowy part, but reflective part of Optimus Prime hidden underneath the truck. Especially if you are like me and remember back in the day when the Transformers in their G1 phase were in all the stores, and you can kind of look under a lot of them and see parts of the body hidden under the vehicle. Kind of a nice little kickback for me personally. The instructions are laid out very much like any ICONX instructions are laid out, which differ slightly from the Metal Earth instructions because they have sections rather than just having a flow chart that you maybe go across or back and forth on the page. They have the build in self-contained sections, and you build pieces, and later on in the build it will call back on previously built pieces and say that that part goes there, which there's certainly an advantage to that flow chart area. But otherwise, the instructions are the same. You have your 360 code, you have your sheets laid out with the numbers. The sheets are, some of the parts are colored so that you can tell like or similar or the same parts. You can easily find them on the different sheets because there are a lot of duplicate parts in this model, so that coloring does help. The instructions for the most part are really easy to follow and put things together, but I did say that there were a couple of things I was going to come back and talk about. And one of the big things I want to talk about is this side piece. When you have built most of the underneath frame structure and wheels and you go to start building the cab, you have the longer side piece and you have a short piece that goes in right here. And the instructions have notations that are very helpful, but they almost seem to, or they rather in my mind seem to contradict what I was seeing on the page. Namely, this little top piece on this rear part, this little thin piece is supposed to flip outwards, and then the tail has a little curve to it. They don't really say anything about that tail, but when you're looking in the directions, and this matter has come up before, how two-dimensional paper instructions can be misleading when it comes to telling you how to do a 3D part. If you remember Darth Vader's helmet, I had a lot of trouble there. This is a similar situation where it looks like that top piece folds inwards or backwards. But the instructions do say, hey, fold this part out, and there's an arrow pointing there. Now, where my confusion lied, where my confusion was at, was are they talking about folding out the entire upper piece, or are they talking about folding out the tip? And I originally thought the tip. Fold the entire thing back, the long thin piece, and that little piece that hangs off was supposed to somehow curve out, and that's where my confusion lied. So they did make an attempt to clear that up so you wouldn't make the mistake, but I still found a way to misunderstand it, because that's what I do. Now, I did pause my camera when I was doing the build video, and the build video will be separate if you want to go check that out. I did pause the camera because I wanted to look up the 360 view and not just rely on the picture on the cardboard box. I wanted to look up the 360 view and get a better idea. Alright, what are they trying to get me to do? What's the final product? I see the final product, I can see what they're trying to say. When I went to look for the 360 view, it's not up yet, so I was left on my own. Now, I did look at the pictures and I did start putting things together in my head and went, okay, they are talking about the entire thing, and what they're not saying is that tail piece does have a little bit of a curve. So I did work it out. And if you want to see how I did the entire thing, definitely check out my build video. But basically, this side piece, you have a front section that curves down a little bit, or bends down a little bit. On the larger piece, you have this back section that bends in a little bit. Not a whole lot. Originally in my video, I bent it a little too much. And then the top part of the smaller section kind of bends in the whole bigger part, and then that little top piece bends out. And then the tail of it curves down a little bit, because what that piece does is cover the gap up here in the top where these two parts don't quite or do meet, however you want to look at it. And then the smaller inside section goes inside of the larger part and hooks into the tabs, and the outer section is on the outside and lays down. So this part kind of goes in at an angle, connects inside, and then the back part lays on top. Not that hard to figure out once you get past what to do with that little top flap section, but that did throw me for a little bit of a loop right there. Now, the other thing that kind of threw me a little bit is once you make that unusual inside to outside connection, it tends to throw a little bit of a curve in the top edge of that part. My first instinct was that, oh, I need to straighten this back out. Don't worry about it too much, because as you continue in the model and you go to lay this top piece on, you actually do need a little bit of a curve there. And it does tell you later in the instructions when you're about to lay that on, you need to kind of shape it in this sort of warped almost S but not quite S fashion. I look at mine and I'm like, I'm pretty much already there, so I'm just going to lay the top on and fine tune it to where I needed to. And I really didn't need to do any tuning to it at all. The weird way that goes from the inside out kind of warped it into almost exactly the right shape. The other thing I kind of want to make note of, for me personally, to get all the way through this build, the things are going fairly smoothly. I mean, there was some confusion with that side part, but I worked it out and I kept going. I'm very happy. This is not a overly frustrating build. It's coming together fairly nicely. And we get to this top piece that goes over the cab with all the lights on it, and I'm thinking, why did they have to do it that way? All of these lights are on the same piece as this large front piece. They're all held on by a long, thin piece of metal. And the idea is I think you're supposed to flip them over and curve the sides down. Now, curving the sides down is a bit more challenging because those tiny little pieces are connected to each other in a larger part. And I personally think I might have preferred it if those pieces were separate. As tiny as and annoying as they are, I think I might have preferred it if those were separate, although I can, having said that, see, as small as those are, that may have been a whole nother level of difficulty getting that tiny little part into place, but I like to think I would be up for that challenge a little more than trying to shape it with everything else in the way in these big banana fingers of mine. What I tried to do, because there's some line engravings, fold lines to where you fold it, those, if you just flip the part over from front to back and curve the sides down, those lines are visible. And I didn't want them to be visible on mine. I wanted them to be smooth, so I flipped them over and then twisted and then curved, and that further weakened that tiny little joint, which turned out to be a big mistake for the middle guy here. Now also, because they're so tiny and they're held onto a part, you can't just easily push them over the tip of some little something, because you're going to end up pushing on the other parts and warping things and further weakening that little stem that's connecting them. So I tried to use a long nose pliers and hold it and use tweezers to kind of wrap it around, and that worked okay. But still, I'm like, alright, I see what you did there. You made it one part, you don't lose the tiny parts. Alright, maybe that is an easier way, but it's objectionable in my mind. You can make it work. The other way, whether or not it'd be better or not, is debatable. Having it separate, having them all separate pieces, even though that'd be annoying, it's debatable whether or not that would be better or worse. Beyond that, as usual, pay attention to the way things are oriented when you are putting parts together. For instance, this fender well in the back right here, you'll notice that this side is shorter than this side. This side, the curve goes all the way down. The back is slightly shorter, doesn't go all the way down. When you're assembling the parts onto this section, you want to pay special attention to which way that bottom part, or which way the short side is, so that the W faces outwards and you're assembling things correctly. And I do want to make one small little thank you to Metal Earth, or whoever it was designed these boxes right here on the side. You've got this lid that folds down on top, and there's a very long, very thin part that's supposed to cleanly fold over, and I really hate those long, thin parts like that to cleanly fold over, because they don't want to cleanly fold over. However, in this instance, they split it right in the middle. So it's actually two shorter sections that were just the right size for my flat nose pliers to grab, bend over, even up the middle a little bit. I bent them so that they're the same angle, and it looks great, and we don't have any warping or twisting or any frustration of why is this such a long part that I can't really get a tool cleanly on from one end to the other. Because yes, I have long nose pliers that can grab really long parts, but the farther down the part you get, the more the jaw of those pliers are open, and the less they're actually bending the part, and the more it's going to warp. If you've been following my builds for quite a while now, or if you've dug far enough back, you may have seen that I've actually built an Optimus Prime truck form before. If you remember, there was a Picture Kingdom version of the Optimus Prime truck, which I have right here. So I did, of course, take a little bit of time to compare the two particular trucks. And while on the surface they are Optimus Prime in truck form, they are definitely trucks, with the numerous back wheels and just the two front wheels and the sleeper cab and the very obvious similarities between trucks in general. That is about where the similarities end. I got to thinking, at first in the back of my head, are these the same truck? No, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. This is a Western Star Optimus Prime, and one of the newer ones. This, I'm not entirely sure, and I did grab the box that I have for the original model, because I do have a tendency to keep a lot of this stuff. But the instructions aren't in the box anymore. And I've not been able to uncover it as of this recording, and forgive me, I enjoyed the Transformers cartoons when I was a kid. I was not a devout enough fan to know all the details behind all the different versions and whether or not this is the original. This is not the original Optimus Prime, because memory serves, the original Optimus Prime was a cab over engine truck, where this is a long nose truck. I do know the difference there. But I want to say that somewhere I was told this is a Peterbilt truck that he's modeled after, but I do not know what movie this is or TV show this is from. I want to say it's from the movies, but maybe their first movie, and the Western Star is from later movies. I don't know. I'm sure someone will let me know in the comments down below. But as it comes to a comparison, it looks like the Picture Kingdom is slightly larger than the Optimus Prime, or than the ICONX, Metal-Earth ICONX version. But I will say that I enjoyed building this one a lot more than I did building this one. The Western Star from from ICONX, the Western Star from ICONX is a lot more colorful and a lot more enjoyable to look at, and very sleek and smooth. Whereas the Picture Kingdom one, while it's a very nice and solid looking truck, and certainly a bit nostalgic in its somewhat older, boxier design, is just plain silver with sort of flames laser cut into it. Still pretty cool looking, but next to the ICONX one, not quite as much. Lest I do remember this one aggravating me a lot with these really thin pieces that you can kind of, in some areas, see through because they're so thin and do not want to bend properly. I do want to thank Metal-Earth for also sending me this model to build and review. They've got me on a Transformers kick, so it's not completely self-imposed. There's more Transformers stuff to come. Really enjoying this though. The Transformers stuff is really cool. Thank you, Metal-Earth, for giving me the opportunity to build and review this model. And it looks stunning. I've got to go find some room for it on the shelf back here that you may have noticed changed just a minute ago when I flipped from one topic to another. I do want to thank my Patreon supporters as well for supporting me in these build videos and review videos. Thank you for your contributions. A little bit goes a long way, and I greatly appreciate it. It gives me the freedom to continue to help others with these builds, because that's what it's all about. It's about helping others with their builds and giving you information that you may not have otherwise have about what's coming out and what's new and what's not new, and so on and so forth. If you enjoy these videos, consider becoming a Patreon supporter. There's a link in the description down below, and here in a second at the very end of this video. As always, thank you for watching, and keep on keeping on.